I think we're actually.
Oh yeah, we're on.
Yeah.
You caught my call. That was fantastic.
I can take it out in post-production, man. It'll be brilliant. It's like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
I always say that, but then I forget to edit it before I post, and then there's all kinds of demoralizing stuff in there.
That's all right.
Oh, that's spooky. Can you hear that?
I can.
Oh, stuff. Awesome. So here we are again. This second episode of Myth Brigade's exploration of Kult Divinity Lost, a horror tabletop RPG, straight out of the depths of hell. So Mike has been kind enough to volunteer to make his character first. So I thought we'd go through the process, give everybody a taste for kind of, how the character generation process works, and also work through, Mike's story. The one process modification we agreed to is we're not going to discuss the character's dark secrets in these sessions. Those will be done off stream, and as well the bonds. So the bond step in the character generation process will be done once we're all finished. We'll all kind of sort that out together because it's usually a pretty good time. So what are you thinking, man? So we talked the last time about having a strong theme of homelessness. So without taking anything away, our first episode will begin under an overpass, this massive overpass in some big city. What are you thinking you're going to do for a character concept?
So I tend to play the sort of hyper charismatic Captain America style leader type characters, and I really want to do something different. I feel like with the theming of sort of unease and horror, I really want to put myself in a zone that I'm not comfortable with. I think that'll kind of come into the character quite a bit. So we talked a little bit about having a clergy member and maybe some sort of cop or undercover cop or some sort of like authority figure, and then a couple of homeless people.
Yeah.
And I really think I want to play one of the homeless people.
Outstanding. Good. Recently homeless, career homeless. Like how long has this individual been homeless?
If the beard is any indication, I would say he's been homeless for some time.
Homeless and without charity razors as well, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm a method actor. I'm really getting into character.
Very cool. You need to get the beard steamer thing. Have you seen this going around on social media?
Awesome. I have. It's too wavy. Yeah.
So those who are new to Kult may not know that, similar to classes in D&D or professions in other games, Kult has this concept of character archetypes. And so they represent very broad collections of people. Inside of archetypes are actual professions. So Mike, you had some ideas as to what you might want to do there. What are you thinking you want to do for your character's archetype?
Yeah, so I've looked through the archetypes. There's 25 of them, and many of them were pretty easy no's, right? You just kind of cross them off the list. But there were two that really stuck out for me. Number one is the Avenger, right? So this is the character that had something and was wronged in some way, whether it was the death of a loved one, whether they were some sort of celebrity, and fell from grace due to, whatever. So it's sort of like a reemergence sort of story. I really like that, especially playing as a homeless person, because there's nowhere to go but up at that point, right? So I've fallen down to the bottom of whatever, and I need to find a way to avenge whatever has happened to me. It's kind of like that nothing to lose sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe you're kind of on the down low, right? You're sort of almost in hiding down there in the ghetto and the sort of savage streets of the city. Very cool. So and the Avenger thing is a nice homage as well to the Captain America type that you usually play.
Correct.
The word Avengers in there, right? Very cool. So go ahead.
I like that one, but that's not the only one that I really like, and I'm hoping maybe you can help point me one way or the other. So the other one is actually the Broken, right? So the Broken are these mentally unstable, literally what it sounds like. They're these tattered human beings, which again fits very well with the homeless. We talked a little bit on our last stream about the 80s and which is the theme or the sort of a time period for our piece. and the mental homes that were sort of shut down and the doors closed, and all those people had to go somewhere.
Of course.
And so there might be a lot of value there too, to be a homeless person that may or may not have come from one of these shelters and may or may not suffer from a genuine mental affliction.
I actually watched this documentary. It's been many, many years, but it was talking about that very thing when all these massive mental institutions closed down, and there were these sort of lobotomy patients just kind of skulking the streets and stuff, and there were just tons of them. And the documentary was this group of people who went around in a van and just sort of fed the people and tried to, you know, give them some sort of quality of life and at least keep them, you know, from being starving. But the interviews they had with these individuals, they were chilling. The stories, those who could remember their time in the home, right? The stories were just absolutely abhorrent, and the incoherent things that the lobotomy patients would say. And just to think, like, back then, someone thought that would actually cure you, right? Just kind of drilling half your brain out.
Right.
Well, he's not twitching anymore.
And I love the idea. Right, exactly. Yep, the tick went away. Like,
yeah.
Well, and I like that, you know, we talked a little bit about my own personal fears and the things that really drive me. And one of them is the inability to convince somebody of what is very real to me. And so somebody who may or may not be from a mental institution, who really truly believes that they are in danger, but not being taken seriously because of the way that they look or the way that they act or that nervous tick, I think that would really play well into my own personal sort of fears.
I love that. Yeah, and I actually had that in my notes for your the things that freak you out. So I'm going to leave the choice up to you, but they're both really compelling. I think the level of darkness I'm shooting for in this campaign, I think the Broken would fit right in, but the Avenger would also give you that sort of motivation, and I've already got a hook in mind for that would help me move the story forward. So either way, what do you think? You could roll randomly as well. You got two choices. You could do a 50-50 D100. High roll is the Broken, low roll is the Avenger.
Yep. All right. High roll Broken, low roll Avenger. All right. We're going Avenger.
Avenger. Outstanding. Okay, cool. So what I've done just to kind of illustrate the process is we're using roll20.net for the character sheet here. So, you know, these fantastic developers out there create custom sheets with some JavaScript and stuff that automatically populate values. But I figured I would transcribe while we talk through this. And then, Mike, you're welcome to do whatever you want on your end. But so we've decided Avenger. Huh?
Taking notes.
Okay. I cannot actually reach my keyboard. I have shit sitting on my keyboard. I'm going to be a horrible typist today. Okay. Inside of that occupation, right? So before you became this Avenger, before this horrific thing happened, what were you? So some examples given in the book are things like, you know, homemaker, police officer, maybe you were a panhandler, you were unemployed, or student, a criminal. You know, the sky's pretty much the limit there. Maybe a businessman, whatever. What's the sort of background occupation you think makes sense for your character?
So my thought immediately went to Jack Bauer, 24, right? This sort of like this cop who went undercover and went in deep, became addicted to drugs, sort of fell from grace. And of course he has this heroic sort of resurgence, and, you know, maybe mine isn't so heroic. So maybe some sort of cop that went undercover, he was double crossed, records erased or whatever. I can't convince people that actually was a cop, or, you know, drug addiction. Let me, you know, be away from that.
That's awesome. And tying back into the 80s too, there was such an intense war against drugs then. I mean, not that it's gotten any easier, right? But cocaine in particular, and, you know, sort of it was, you know, front of mind for everyone. So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So the next step's really all on you, and I'll let you tell me where to put it. So first and foremost, you know, again, we discussed you should be picking a dark secret. We'll discuss that off stream. Disadvantages. So you're automatically going to receive the disadvantage Oath of Revenge. That kind of comes with the frame, if you will, just you know, for that archetype. And had I known you were going to choose this, I would have had my page marked. But Oath of Revenge is on page 100 for those of you who are following along in your cult book. So what's that all about? The searchable PDF would probably be better. Oath of Revenge. So you have sworn to avenge an unforgivable injustice. Decide who is the subject of your vengeance and what they have done to you. It could be a single individual, people who share a certain trait, everyone who is left-handed, or members of an organization. Whenever the target of your vengeance or someone/something associated with them appears, you're going to have to roll, and there are certain game effects that take place when your Oath of Revenge is activated. Now, playing into the story, what I will tell you is that there is an opportunity for an organization. I could tell you more offline because I don't want to spoil the story.
Sure.
So if you wanted to kind of tie into that, and it would give you a good reason for being down in the streets and kind of living in that squalorous situation.
Yeah, if you've got something in mind, I'd love to hear it.
Outstanding.
We can talk about that.
Yeah. Cool. So you'll go, you'll tie that back to a specific organization, and it will give you a little bit of an edge too. You won't just be a homeless person. You're homeless on purpose. I'll share that with you, because that's where you need to be to find out more about this organization. So in addition to that, you get to choose one more disadvantage. Your choices are mental compulsion, nightmares, schizophrenia, stalker, or you're wanted. What do you think?
Without knowing too much about the organization and sort of how that's all going to work in, it's kind of hard to say. Being homeless on purpose is interesting, right? So then maybe it's not schizophrenia or drug addiction or anything like that. Maybe it's something else. Let me look at wanted.
That's on page 101.
Wanted by the authorities. Yeah. Nightmares might be cool. I don't know that it's going to be like a whole lot to leverage RP off of. But if I'm not really supposed to be homeless, right, and I'm doing this for a reason, maybe I do have nightmares from being in a place that I don't want to be.
Now, so to be clear, and I'm not trying to steer you in the direction of complete willful homelessness. Maybe you've gotten so obsessed with the situation that it's driven you to that. What I can tell you is that the reason you'll be exactly where you are, right, the specific spot where we bring everyone together, will be willful. So you could very well be drug addicted, living, kind of on the streets, unwillingly. But yeah, so what do you think? Mental compulsion, nightmares, schizophrenia, stalker, or wanted? Everybody wants to be wanted, right?
So mental compulsion, all it says is you have a mental compulsion. So like obsessing over revenge, right? Would that be considered a mental compulsion, a sort of obsession over?
Yeah, it could be. And I mean, it could be something not just on your revenge, because that's kind of a redundant thing, but maybe it's something to do with what happened that you obsess over, something. Yeah. So let's go back to that before we move too much further on. So if you go with mental compulsion, what actually did happen? How were you wronged? So you were a cop, you were doing your thing. Did you have a family? Are they dead? Did you?
I had thought about that.
Murdered corpses.
It could be something, right? So, you undercover. Maybe you get found out, and the organization takes action against your family. Maybe there's a dirty cop on the inside that gave me away, and there's some sort of a sense of revenge against that particular person. I like the family thing. I feel like it's very cliche, but it'd be
Charles
easy enough.
Bronson, right? It's like very 80s cop kind of like, yeah. Okay. So your mental compulsion, we'll have to work out what that is specifically around what happened, and maybe to your point, right? Like maybe kind of trace it back. You've got this kind of dirty cop who gave you away, which led to this event, right? And when you came home to find your family butchered there, and maybe, quite honestly, maybe you tie that almost back if you didn't want to. And again, the RP side of compulsion is one thing, but then what if you're wanted? Maybe they think you did it.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
That would be.
That would suck.
Like set up. Yeah.
Like, I didn't do it. I swear. I swear to God, it's like a child.
I was being a drug addict. I couldn't have possibly done this.
I was too busy
to be a bad guy.
What do you think? Tough choices, and it's funny because there's only 5, but they're so broad, and that's one thing that Kult really does well, and also drives me crazy is things are so broad. It makes it hard to hone in sometimes.
Yep. I think the wanted would be able to give me a little bit more of a focused sort of target, right? So yeah, right. Dirty cop on the inside, that set me up. Family's murdered, whatever, right? So there's my revenge, right? To try to figure out what happened and try to solve for that. But then I'm also right. Maybe I was set up or whatever, and there's that sort of disadvantage. I'm constantly on the lookout. I'm homeless and trying to stay low and try to keep off the radar.
Yeah, I like that a lot because there's a thicker story there, right? And so you know that we can weave that in and out of the main story, and bring some kind of action to the table as well. So that's really cool. Okay, so we've got Oath of Revenge and Wanted. So those are set. The next step is advantages. So what wonderful things are there about your character? So there are 3 options. I'm sorry, that's not right. You can choose 3 of the following options. So you have Animal Speaker, Instinct, Enhanced Awareness, Intimidating, Survival Instinct, Code of Honor, An Eye for an Eye, and Rage. It's like the equivalent of a cult barbarian, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. So right off the bat, Animal Speaker, and that can go away.
You don't want to have a parakeet
Code of
that
Honor.
travels with you? We could name it.
I don't need all that extra responsibility.
That's true. Okay.
I think Code of Honor as well will go right out the window. Right at this point, the gloves are off, Punisher style.
Yeah.
Like I've got one goal, and whatever I got to do to accomplish it is what I'm going to do.
He's lost everything, and yeah, I get it. Okay, so we'll knock those 2 out. Instinct, Enhanced Awareness, Intimidating, Survival Instinct, Eye for an Eye, or Rage.
I like the idea of Survival Instinct. Excuse me for a second. I'm trying to find the page here.
It's somewhere around 109, I think. Right? Or is it? That's weird.
These are...
Is it named something else? Survivalist, perhaps? What am I missing? Oh, wait. They're sorted differently. Jeez, okay. I love that people on the stream are like, there's a book being used. Survival Instinct is on page 119. For those following
I was way off.
Yeah, so they're categorized. They're broken up into categories. Whenever you suffer a serious or critical injury, yet refuse to yield, roll plus your violence. On a success, you may temporarily ignore the effects of the injuries, but you will need treatment to stabilize them as soon as the time limit expires. And there are varying results for each of these, but yeah, so basically you're just steel. You're not going to give up.
So I like that in this sort of like hyper focused, this is my goal, this is what I need to do, sort of like blood rage sort of thing. So I like the idea of survival instinct.
Hard. Or like Chuck Norris of the movies of the 80s, right? Like he's going through some hardcore shit and he's not giving up. He's carrying his leg over his shoulder and picking bullets out of himself like while he's eating a sandwich or something. Yeah.
Right. Maybe I'm not the best fighter in the world, but I can take a beating and I'm going to keep moving till I get to that guy right there.
Yeah. It's like it reminds me of like a blood sport kind of thing, right? Like he's gonna hold it together until the end, and then just fall over in a heap. So you want to take that as one of your 3?
Yeah, I think so. Survival instinct.
Oops. I need to rearrange my keyboard for better typing going forward. All right, so you got 2 more.
Yeah, I was looking at eye for an eye, but I don't know. I don't know. So whenever you suffer a serious or critical injury, name the person you feel is responsible. You get a +2 ongoing to all rolls against them forever.
Oh shit. You're never gonna let this go. That reminds me of the scene at the end of Rambo. I think it was part 2, like First Blood part 2, right, where he's on the microphone and he's talking to Murdoch, who set him up or whatever, and he's like, Murdoch, I'm coming for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that sort of plays into the whole oath of revenge.
Yeah, and he murders like a small country to get to Murdoch, and then yeah.
I'll do the same. The homeless community will never be the same.
Is that what you're gonna do? Eye for an eye?
Yeah, let's do eye for an eye.
All right.
And last but not one. Least,
you're shaping up to be a little grumpy, man. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, a little bit, and I feel like there's a bit of a chip on my shoulder here.
Yeah.
Maybe intimidating. If I'm thinking the Punisher type persona, right, where I'm just like, I'm hyper focused, I've been wronged, I've got a goal in mind, the rest of that shit can just go away, I don't care. Maybe there is a bit of an intimidating presence about me.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, particularly with the backstory, right? Like you're kind of
right. If I was a former cop or officer of some sort, then there would be a bit of air of confidence, maybe chest out a little bit, shoulders back, but in this sort of dark and gritty under the bridge type thing. Yeah, if I approach you, maybe you squeeze a little bit.
I could see too, right, like from the perspective of having interrogated people before and having kind of sort of bullied people around to get information or influence a situation, so that makes sense. Yeah. What page is that on? What are the game effects?
117. It's under violence.
Go figure. So there's something about you that instinctively makes others fear you. Whenever you're trying to frighten another person, roll plus violence, and then you have a series of outcomes. I guess the question I have here is like, what is that thing that makes them so scared? What is it? Is it just a vibe?
It could be a crazed look in my eye. It could be the way that I hold myself. It could be the direct, like, I'm coming for you nature when I approach somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. It's sort of just like that's the equivalent of Jason Voorhees. He's just not going to stop walking. He's coming, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that. All right, so I lost my page for the broken Avenger, righto. Okay, so that covers you. So you've got survival instinct, you have eye for an eye, and you have intimidating, which is also violence. Awesome. So the next step, where you would typically roll 4d6 and drop the lowest and go through that exercise, you assign a series of modifiers, starting with your major attributes. And so you basically have +2, +1, and 0 to share between fortitude, reflexes, and willpower.
Okay, so how many am I rolling?
So you choose. So there's no rolling. It's literally, this is the
we're not actually rolling.
Yeah, the one thing I love about this system is it's so simple in terms of the mechanic. So you basically you have your primary attributes, sort of your fortitude, reflexes, and willpower. And then there are some other active attributes, right? So well, let me rephrase that. So your primary are actually passive. So they're things that you don't try to use. Fortitude, it's just something you have, right? Willpower, something you have. Reflexes, so on. So you start by assigning +1, or I'm sorry, +2, +1, or 0 to any of those three, representing that kind of spread, right? So you can be super solid in one thing, and another thing, and just kind of
Okay.
super average.
So with the survival instinct, I think it makes sense for fortitude to be my +2.
Okay.
Reflexes, I'm gonna say, is my 0.
Okay.
It's I'm very, like, I'm not trying to almost like protect myself at this point. I've got one goal, and I'll sort of soak the damage and keep moving through, but I'm not necessarily going to be, dodging and juking and things like that.
You're not. I mean, there is a bit of a Matrix element to this game, but you're not Neo, right? You're not gonna fly and dodge.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
And then keep it together. I think +1. I definitely need to have some sort of, and maybe we even flip those, right? Because I think keeping it together, my one focus is my revenge.
Right.
But everything else is sort of starting to fuzzy and blur around me. I don't really care about anything else. And so what do you think? Should that be the 0, or do we think that's +1?
So I like your perspective on reflexes versus fortitude. And I think the keep it together bit, right? Like the willpower represents the fact that you're even still here after all you've seen and after all you've had to deal with, So yeah, I think that makes sense. Fortitude and willpower. Okay. Yeah, I like that. So the next one basically are your active attributes. So you've got charisma, coolness, intuition, perception, reason, soul, and violence. Sounds like violence is going to be up there. So basically you've got a scale going from +0 up to +3 and then down to -2. So you've basically got your best score would be a +3, second best +2, +1, so on. To spread across those statistics.
Okay.
What's the most important?
Violence. So, in combat +3 for sure.
Outstanding. Okay.
Reason and intuition, I think, playing off of a sort of officer type background would need to be high naturally. So maybe it's a +2 to reason, +1 to intuition.
Okay, I like that. And I think that makes sense because it's sort of, you're more of a mechanical thinker, right? It's not that you feel it per se, but the fact that you've got sort of a little bit of enhanced intuition would help you kind of sniff out the lie. There's one more +1, then you have a +0, a -1, and a -2. So what's the next +1? What's your next good quality? You should make him super charismatic. He's like murdering everyone, but like, hi everyone.
Yeah, I thought about that, and I definitely think charisma needs to be a bit of a dump, just because
Steve.
of.
Okay, so you want to make that -2?
I'm intimidating. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, charisma I could do -2.
Okay.
I was actually thinking coolness would be -2.
Okay.
Being a bit of a hothead.
Which one?
Let's do coolness -2.
Okay.
And do charisma -1.
Okay.
Soul and sort of the illusion. I'm not sure that there's very much supernatural, at least from my perspective right now. There's not a whole lot supernatural going on with my character. He seems very cookie cutter revenge cop story. And so from that lens, I think I'm going to be fairly blind to what's going on.
So I'm going to give you one little thing that just came to mind just to set the scene at the end, right? So you on the heels of this, discovering your family, again, just completely butchered. You run out into the street, you're unarmed. You sort of come home and put your things on the counter, and you sort of run out into the street looking desperately. and the assailant clearly hiding in the shadows. There's a chase scene, like a movie-esque kind of like, long chase scene through sort of, you live in an apartment in the city, so up and down fire escapes and that sort of thing. And then there's this scene where, clearly tired of being chased, he just turned and looked at you and smiled as a truck just completely barreled over him. Brains, blood, fragments of bone everywhere. There was
so no fear of the death, no nothing, just like
very intentional. So the interesting thing is that there was a tattoo, sort of scarified almost, on his forearm that was a strange occult symbol. You're not really sure what it means, and you didn't have any encounter with like a demon and have a chat like, Demi, why you do this to me, Demi? Nothing like that. Right. But there's something nagging at you about that experience. The look in his eyes as he turned, it's almost as if whatever it was that was controlling his face, that smile, knew that death was just the beginning.
Right. So, started me down a trail that I had no idea what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'll feed the +1 to soul.
Okay.
And we'll give perception a 0, which I'm fine with in terms of this sort of like hothead that may not necessarily always take a step back to see what's going on anymore. Almost like this sort of tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I may miss some of the finer details, for the trees.
Sure, that makes sense. Look at all these trees. Good. So just to recap, so you have in your passive attributes. So fortitude is a 2, willpower is a 1, and reflexes is 0. So you're incredibly hardy. Very, very sort of strong of will, but maybe not the quickest human being out there. Maybe you're just tired. You're active, so your reason you have a 2, intuition is a 1, perception 0, coolness -2, violence 3. So no one should fuck with you. Charisma of -1 and soul of 1. So representing that you have some exposure to the illusion, and you don't want to see through it too much because it's fairly disturbing when you do. Mm-hmm. So Steve is asking if you're Riddick. He can see. He can see. It's fine. Like old Riddick or new Riddick or what? Like pitch black Riddick or Riddick in the movie that remains nameless? Mm-hmm. What's this guy look like? I'll let you fill it in detail, but for the sake of the stream, I'm thinking he's not wearing a 3-piece suit all the time. At least not one.
No, certainly not. I would be very disheveled, long, unruly beard, probably balding on top, but intimidating presence, right? Like a tall 6 foot. Even though I look worn, I still stand with like this air of I don't want to say confidence because it's not necessarily confidence, but purpose. And I'm there. I've got a presence. My knuckles and my fingernails are dirty and scabbed and bruised from, maybe fights with other homeless people or maybe trying to catch wild animals with my bare hands to survive.
Delicious rat. Everyone loves a good sewer rat, man.
Yeah. Well,
nice.
That's the fuel I need to run on.
Like that.
Yeah, my eyes are dark and narrow, and they're less the sort of energetic and bouncing sort of eyes that I used to have as an officer, where I was constantly scanning and constantly aware of what was going on. And now they're just more presence and they're more piercing and
like careworn. It's right? like kind of like just yeah.
The laser sort of like focus on that and what is that, and the sort of like unease that come across as somebody when my eyes lock on with them. Body, I would say, is withered. Not not to the point of like supreme malnutrition, but you can tell that I was much stronger and much more fit in a past life, so to speak. And now I'm a little bit more just lanky, and I look hungry.
So you don't belong on a Feed the Children commercial, but you've definitely you could use a meal, right?
Yep.
Not I'd say malnourished is probably a decent word, just not to an extreme that you're unable to function.
Right.
Nice. I love the idea that you hunt rats. Rat souffle.
Gotta eat, man.
You gotta eat. That's it. Fantastic. What do you think? What's his name?
God, it's like the easiest question with the hardest answer.
It is. It's always the hardest one, and you have to live with that for a bit of a long time, at least until he dies. A horrible, bloody death.
Let's go with. I'm looking at some name generators here.
Steve Nedley is available. I hear you can go with
Steve Nedley. Yeah, I got the Hagrid beard thing going. Let's go with Frank Quinn.
Ooh.
Little homage to Frank Castle, the Punisher.
Yeah, I like that. Quinn too. It's a good investigator name, right? It's a good detective name.
It is.
Detective Quinn.
Detective Quinn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. So the thing that's crazy, right, is that literally covers the core character creation. You don't need much more than that. The way the Fuel by the Apocalypse engine sort of works is, it kind of bubbles things up into those, active stats and, conceptual roles, sort of categoric roles. We'll work through that in a later stream. But I did want to just solidify a little bit around the story. So this event happened, and on the heels of that, kind of playing off your fears a little bit, right? You tried like hell to convince everyone that there was more in this guy's eyes, the assailant, like the way he smiled at you, there was something more. You had to dig in there, and you had a lead that you really wanted to follow, but the administration of the department they weren't hearing it. Why aren't you a cop anymore?
Leave it alone, Quinn.
Yeah. So, there was some discussion, actually. Did we say, yeah, you're wanted, actually? We said that. So how did that go?
Mm-hmm.
How did that play out? Ooh. Your fingerprints were everywhere.
Right.
So, interestingly, you played it off like, you were in pursuit. This guy was basically... He killed your parent or your family and laughed it off. Get smashed by a truck. But then when the forensics team came and started really digging in, your prints were all over the murder weapon. Your hair was on your wife's corpse. Your fluids were present. How the fuck did that happen? You don't know. It wasn't you. You know it wasn't you.
And this story of a chase is starting to be seen as evasion.
Yeah.
And we saw you fleeing the scene. We didn't see anybody that you were pursuing. Like, well, then why would I come back? Why did I go back to the scene of the crime? Like, well, you tell us, Quinn. I like that.
Yeah, except for Tommy across the street. He saw the whole thing. But poor little kid is too scared to say anything. So you've got an ally in Tommy if you need him. Like a 1980s style kid ally. Not like a sidekick. But he's around the neighborhood if you need him. He's got walkie-talkie. Fucking speak and spell.
Yeah, he's up in the treehouse.
I like that a lot. So you haven't even come to terms with how that's possible, because you weren't home. It had been quite some time since you'd come home, actually, because of your sort of undercover situation. But whatever it was, it's either falsified by the department or something. So
I think I'd get the feeling that the department knows and is trying to cover it up. Right, this sort of like, leave it alone, Quinn, and they start to direct it back to me. Well, then how do you explain this and how do you explain that? And any sort of semblance of proof or rebuttlement that I offer, they immediately swat it down, or they disregard it, and they refuse to see the bigger picture. And at some point I would have to evade and get away.
Yeah.
before they formally arrest me and lock me up.
Sure, is your partner, right? Maybe your partner helped you kind of escape, disappear. And I could see him saying, "Yeah, leave it alone, Quinn. You got to leave it alone." And of course, I mean, you wouldn't want to. It was your family. They were murdered.
Right.
And they're trying to frame you.
Mm-hmm.
So just before that, maybe a week, maybe just a few days, you got a hold of some evidence that linked a particularly curious drug manufacturing operation back to a local corporation, the organization. I think that would work, right? Like tying it back.
Yeah. I like that. And you know, maybe I'm not so much undercover. Right? I kind of feel like we're kind of pulling out of the undercover thing, and it's more of an active detective, active cop sort of thing. But I very likely could have been, on the tails of something big with this drug and what's going on, almost more like a beat cop kind of thing. And I start to pull back the layers, and I start to get close, and something happens, and then I can't explain what happened.
Yeah. I like that. You could preserve the undercover element if it's important to the story in your head. I think you could.
I think there's plenty of motive here, with the revenge and the sort of supernatural stuff that's going on there. I don't know that the undercover is going to add too much now.
Okay.
At this point,
that's fair. That's fair. And then of course you're not so off the grid like everyone. You know, it's going to be really hard to do what you do, or it's going to be hard to get around because people know who you are. Perhaps, you know, your partner maybe is about the only tie back to proper society that you have as you skulk along with the homeless folks. Yeah, I like that. I think we can work with that. I'm just dying.
Yep. I'm very happy with how this turned out. This is completely different than what I originally had in my head, and yet, like, I totally buy it and I'm invested. This is good.
Awesome. The rest is up to you, man. I just have to tell you that there's all kinds of stuff trying to eat you or stab you or cut your arms off or something. I don't know. So I'm like at the corner of my eye, I'm watching Steve just go on about what was a Thursday? He says that's fluid and hair day. I don't know what that means. Yes, you are screwed. You're going to die. That's what it is, Steve.
You should be the other homeless person, Steve. You could be like my homeless buddy, and the only one that believes me.
But he doesn't truly believe you. He's just, you know, he's fucking terrified of you because you're intimidating.
He's the schizophrenic broken that is just mentally uneased, and he's just like, yeah, man, sure, I believe you. I've seen some shit too.
Yes. So for those who are just catching up, so our first episode, which you should check out on the YouTube channel, we agreed that it would be the campaign will be set in the 80s. It will be in a large city, which is we're trying to pick which one just yet, but that the campaign concept would sort of revolve around homelessness with a couple of homeless folks, a clergy member, I think that's going to be CJ, and an investigator, but I think it was more of a paranormal investigator who's down here for some reason or another. We're not really sure what. I think that might be Nancy. So I think that's pretty much it. So what's going to be great is we have all this stuff here on Roll20. We're not sponsored by Roll20, so we should actually replace their logo with something cooler. But so this data is all there for you. Mike, feel free to fill it out more.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a good stub to get started. So I owe you some conversation around dark secrets, I think.
Yes.
And so we'll figure that out, you know, at work or something, you know, priorities and all.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So we are just about on time. A couple last notes. So we will be going through this process with each of our players. We have 4 players. We have Mike, we have Steve Nedley, CJ Wild, and Nancy Weldy, sorry. Each of whom will be creating a character over the next couple of weeks, and then we will get started with scary stories. So also check out Tides of Nurgle, which is a campaign that we're running with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay once a month on Thursdays. The next session is July 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So this has been really cool, man. I'm excited.
Me too.
I can't wait to see how many people you murder in like a 2-hour session like this. So here's the cool part: equipment. So you don't have to go through the process of buying equipment and sorting all that shit out. You can sort of rationalize the gear that you have. Given the homelessness, though, like that sort of affected the campaign, I'm going to ask that you take the time to at least sort of chart out what is it that you carry with you. Maybe you've got a stash somewhere, and that's cool. But what is it that you carry on your person? Throw that in a note somewhere on your character sheet, and we'll be good to go.
Cool.
Awesome. So, Frank Quinn, it's a pleasure to meet you, man. I look forward to
meet you.
Trying to scare the fuck out of you, and we'll do it real soon.
It's gonna be awesome.
So, Steve,
Awesome.
I think you're up next, man. Let's find a time to connect and figure out what sort of drug-infested homeless person you're going to be. Mike, man, I hope you have a good rest of the weekend. I'll post this on YouTube here soon. You guys, subscribe and like, and I don't know, click the bell or whatever the fuck you do on YouTube. We'll see you next time.
Bye.